sweet son are doing wonderfully. Keep a low profile and we'll all be fine. Just whatever you do, don't turn into your father. And Busy, don't you become your mom. Before leaving, Kat looked on the large box fan wedged in the window since mid-May. Clicked on the rubber diaper cover. Claire insisted Busy wear was clearly the reason she had been overheating. Appearances have always mattered more to her than people, Kat thought, deftly removing the diaper cover. Then she returned Busy's pinky to Chew's searching mouth. You both have my blessing to behave as unbecoming as you want occasionally. Ignore her and have harmless fun. Oh, that's not gonna age well. 1977. A well-appointed suburban kitchen, Larkspur, New Jersey. Drapes and patios, families and slacks. The citizens of Tony Larkspur were cut from a prescribed cloth. Major appliances were endlessly updated, and swimming pools de rigueur. Kat's turn of the century colonial had splendid white shingles, dormers, and black shutters. Her front door sported a worn brass knocker in the shape of a mallard duck. The knocker on Claire's house next door was a fox. The two stately beauties were separated by a tall privet hedge, flanked by award-winning gardens that erupted every spring. Their combined 8-acre backyard, however, was open and continuous. It boasted a massive lawn, in-ground pool, hoops, and a trampoline. The home's interiors strictly adhered to the mandatory design code of the day. Among the approved colors were sage green, cranberry, orange, and shocking pink. More ducks and foxes repeated themselves madly on chintz upholstery and wallpaper, with the occasional smattering of crossed tennis rackets and geese. Do you think her children are weird? Claire asked Kat while looking out the kitchen window. She bristled as she said it. The thought horrified her to no end. Kat craned her neck to see all 5 Thornton cousins playing touch football in the sprawling backyard. Everyone was dressed in wool sweaters and hats for the annual New Year's Day game, with the exception of 12-year-olds Busy and Chew, who were wearing Charlie's Angels wigs, Farah and Jacqueline, respectively. 20 or so assorted family friends' kids joined them, their laughter visible in the brittle late afternoon air. Which ones? Kat teased, knowing full well. She didn't think she'd ever heard her sister use the word weird, and almost asked if she knew what it meant. Are we talking about Busy and Chew? Yes, obviously, snapped Claire. And what kind of weird are we talking? Adorable weird or depraved weird? Claire nearly said, oh, for heaven's sake, they're only 12. How depraved could they already be? But didn't. Realizing she was being baited, she reached for her drink and another pinch of paprika. Her burgundy high-waisted slacks set off her narrow, lithe figure, and final net kept her hot rollered hair just so. Kat sipped her tab as she watched her sister's thin, outstretched arm. You're not the Queen of England, you know. You can stop anointing the eggs. Claire dragged her Marlboro with the other hand as they worked in Kat's new avocado and orange kitchen. The appliances were also new, top-of-the-line Amana, and naturally pre-ordered to match. The sisters readied the crushed, nut-covered cheese ball and sprinkled paprika over 6 dozen deviled eggs. They'd been arranged magazine-perfect on porcelain platters, as if this had been their aesthetic destiny all along. Okay, the next book I'm going to read a little bit to y'all is The Key Lime Crime by Lucy Burdett. Also, with the book I just read to y'all, that is where I'm going to stop because it gets kind of disgusting a few pages in, like after that. So, yeah. Chapter 1. No, everybody's not a critic. What most of you are doing out there, online and in 3 dimensions, is complaining. Pete Wells, The Art of Complaining. The New York Times, February 6, 2019. To whom does our island belong? I found myself wondering that as I sat on my scooter in the rain, late for my pricey but absolutely necessary for a person who eats for a living personal trainer, attempting to cross a massive traffic jam on Eaton Street. Underneath the beads and the beer and the outdoor burgers and music on Duval Street, where the tourists found their quote-unquote happy place, there was a struggle for ownership. I'd seen this on Instagram and Facebook when I posted something especially beautiful about our little knob of coral. Outsiders craved a piece of paradise as much as the locals. The insiders wanted them gone. This week between Christmas and New Year's, Key West was bursting at the seams. Even my general practitioner had confessed he wouldn't leave his condo complex unless going to work. He'd never seen the island this busy. People wouldn't stop for anyone, on a bicycle, walking, on a scooter, in a car. Old folks, children, chickens, residents, visitors. fierce rivalry between key lime pie bakers leads to a pastry chef's murder, food critic Haley Snow is fit to be pied. During the week between Christmas and New Year's, the year-round population of Key West, Florida, faces a tsunami of tourists and snowbirds. It doesn't help that outrageously wealthy key lime pie aficionado David Sloan has persuaded the city to host his pie baking contest. Every pie purveyor on the island is out to win the coveted key lime key to the city, and Key-zest food critic Haley Snow is on the scene to report it. Meanwhile, Haley's home life is turning more tart than sweet. Haley's new hubby, police detective Nathan Bransford, announces that her intimidating mother-in-law is bearing down on the island for a surprise visit. Haley offers to escort Nathan's crusty mom on the iconic conch train tour of the island's holiday lights, but it becomes a recipe for disaster when they find a corpse among the glittering palm trees and fantastic flamingos. The victim, Citron Verd's controversial new pastry chef, was a front-runner in Sloan's contest. It's bad enough that Haley's too curious mother-in-law is cooking up trouble. Now the murderer has to take out a slice of Haley. Can she handle the heat of a killer's kitchen? Okay, I'm gonna keep it a book with y'all. I do not like that writing style, so I don't think I'm gonna be reading that book. But I thought I might enjoy it because it's like a mystery. Alright, the next book we have here is The Husband Hour by Jamie Brenner. This honestly seems like it'll be really sad. Chapter 1. The warm winter still surprised her, every day a gift. But that particular morning, the heat was a problem. She didn't want to wear a short-sleeved dress. It seemed the entire city of Los Angeles had turned out, like it was the Super Bowl or the Academy Awards. The Staples Center arena was filled to capacity, with hundreds more left standing outside. Lauren looked out at a sea of silver and black hockey jerseys, military uniforms, and American flags, all the colors blurring together like a spinning pinwheel. She had spent dozens of days and nights in that arena cheering on her husband playing ice hockey for the LA Kings. But today, she wasn't part of the crowd. She was separate, up front and on display, sitting by the podium dressed in black and hiding behind dark sunglasses. Surrounded by thousands of people, Lauren felt completely alone. An hour into her husband's memorial service, she was dizzy with nerves and exhaustion. Grief was an odd thing. It made you numb, but exquisitely sensitive at the same time. She had to admire the emotion's versatility. It now owned her completely. She scanned the front row of the stands to find her parents. It was strange. For the first time in years, she truly wanted her mother, and yet there was nothing her mother could say or do to make her feel better. She'd almost told her parents not to come, and she certainly didn't want to see her sister. This nonsense has gone on long enough, her mother had said over the phone. You just lost your husband. You need your family around you. Of course your sister will be there. But she wasn't. Now, under the glare of television lights set up for ESPN's live broadcast of the memorial service, her parents looked lost. Lauren tried to catch her mother's eye, but she was focused on the jumbotron showing the president's tribute to Rory, our fallen soldier, a true American hero. Her mother's expression seemed to say, "How did we get here?" Lauren hoped she didn't have the same expression on her face, not when the world was watching, not when photos of her would appear everywhere. Would they say what she was thinking? That this felt like theater, a circus, a show that had nothing to do with her husband, that she was just playing her part, a role she hadn't auditioned for and didn't want. Grieving widow, just 24 years old, such a tragedy, such a loss. And then the part of the show when a man she'd never met before handed her a folded American flag. She reached for it mechanically and placed it in her lap. She knew these ceremonies, the symbolism of the flag, were meant to give her comfort, but going through the motions just made her feel like a fake. It was useless. Her world would never again have meaning. Sitting there, she tried to deflect the waves of sympathy, thinking, this is my fault. Just when she thought the moment couldn't get any worse, son's hand and sobbed. Matt wanted to get the man on camera and ask, "What did Rory Kinsett mean to you?" But he didn't have time. The real story was inside. The question was, could Matt actually get inside? He wouldn't know until he tried flashing his long-expired press pass, a relic from his days working in journalism. His phone buzzed in his pocket and he ignored it. No doubt it was someone from 2 time zones away wondering why the hell he'd canceled the scheduled shoot for the documentary he was in the middle of directing. But if there was one thing Matt had learned, it was that it was better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission, and that went both for missing the shoot today and for crashing the memorial service. Matt made his way to security and handed his press pass to the guard. If he thought the whole thing through better, he might have been able to wrangle a legitimate pass from an old colleague, but nothing about this day had been thought through. The flight to LA, the decision to show up at the service, all impulses. His entire career had started with an impulse, so why stop now? But this wasn't a career move. What drew him to the stadium on that hot and inconvenient day, the magnetic pull that he could no more ignore than he could stop breathing, was personal. The guard waved him inside, either missing the expiration date on the pass or simply not caring. The service was half over anyway. Matt followed a second security guy's direction to the gate and escalator that would lead to the press box. Matt jostled for a spot in the crowded pen, nodding to a few journalists he knew and then looking up at the video of the president eulogizing the hockey star